We continue our series of retrospectives of iconic adventure game franchises. You can already find numerous videos in my channel with the complete history of series like King's Quest, Space Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, Gabriel Knight, and more. Also, if you are a fan of the genre, you can watch my 2-hour documentary on the rise and fall of the adventure games. Please do not forget to support my channel by subscribing and turning on the notifications for it. This is a very special video to me, as the game covered is my personal favorite. I have played hundreds of adventure games in the last 30 years or so, but none of them had such an impact to me as a gamer than Loom. Loom is a fantasy-themed adventure game released by Lucasfilm Games in the 90s. The project lead was Brian Moriarty, a former Infocom employee who has previously worked on other adventure games like Trinity and Beyond Zork. Loom is unique among the genre with its magnificent and complex story, unforgettable characters, and interface, the likes of which I haven't found in any other game. It is considered one of the best adventure games of all time and stands timeless today as an example of excellent storytelling across all forms of narrative media. In this video, I will try to cover all aspects of the game's plot, development and reception, and discuss its legacy.
It was long after the passing of the second shadow, when dragons ruled the twilight sky and the stars were bright and numerous, that humankind began to thirst again for dominion over nature.
The introduction of the game begins not on screen, but in a 30-minute audio drama that was included in a cassette inside the game's packaging. There it is explained that the game takes place in the year 8021, in a world which may well be Earth in the distant future or in a parallel long-forgotten past. It is the age of the Great Guilds, when people formed common trade city-states to control their knowledge through strict tradition and fear. The initially humble Guild of the Weavers managed to rise in power through their use of the Great Loom, which can not only weave fabric but also reality itself. They were persecuted for witchcraft and had to migrate to a far island which they named Loom after their magical artifact and symbol of their guild. As their members suffer in exile and their numbers dwindle, Lady Cygna Threadbare begs the elders of the guild, Klothos, Lachesis and Atropos, to use their power of the Great Loom to end the suffering of their people. The elders' names are a direct reference to the three fates of Greek mythology, in which Klothos starts a man's life and spins it into a thread, Lachesis measures the thread of life, and Atropos cuts the thread and ends life. The elders shun Lady Cygna as it is not her place to play God. Cygna ignores them and secretly visits the Great Loom, where she plants a grey thread, causing an infant to be born out of it. This causes the elders' wrath upon her, but before surrendering, she gives the infant to her serving woman, Dame Hetzel, who names the child Bobbin. The elders notice that the grey thread has thrown the pattern of the Great Loom into chaos. They cast a spell of transcendence on Lady Cygna, transforming her into a swan, and banish Bobbin from their guild and its knowledge until his coming of age 17 years hence. Hetzel raises Bobbin as her own child, secretly teaching him a few basics of weaving. This concludes the audio drama introduction to the Loom setting, and the game begins showing Bobbin's 17th birthday. Bobbin is summoned by the three elders to the sanctuary. He arrives only to witness them cast the transcendence spell on Hetzel to punish her for secretly educating him. To their surprise and utter fear, she is not transformed into a swan but into an egg. Suddenly, a swan flies into the room, casting the same spell on the three elders and all the citizens, who fly away, leaving the island. Bobbin is left alone in the sanctuary, where he picks up the elder Atropos' staff and the egg and begins his adventure. The game was released in 1990 for MS-DOS using EGA graphics. This version was later ported to the Amiga, Atari ST and Macintosh computers. A VGA remake was released a couple of years later with 256 colors, enhanced music and full talkie support, the first of the Lucasfilm games to do so. It was released in a single CD-ROM initially for the Japanese FM Towns computer and later for the DOS. Even though it utilizes the SCUM engine, the fourth Lucasfilm game to do so, its user interface is totally unique. Atropos staff plays a huge part in the game, as Bobbin can use it to play music drafts that represent actions. He learns each new draft or action either by reading books or interacting with objects and the environment. When doing so, a music piece is played based on the notes on the staff. If the same pattern is repeated by the player on an item or the environment, the relevant action will take place. For instance, when he plays the open draft on a closed door, it will open. If he plays the same draft in reverse, the opposite action will take place. In our example, the open draft played in reverse leads to closing an object. Initially, there are 4 notes available on the staff, but as the game progresses, Bobbin learns more notes leading up to a total of 8. In order for the developers to assist players of keeping track of all the spells they learn across the game, a notebook was included in the original packaging called the Book of Patterns. There the player can write down the notes of each spell to help them in the game. I remember back in the day when I first played the game, I had to constantly change my notes in this book as I tried to keep track of all the spells, but this interface was amazing to me and it was a very enjoyable process. The game can be played at 3 difficulty levels, each different in how clearly the notes being played are labeled. For example, the standard level indicates the notes on a scale below the Atropos staff, while the expert level shows notes and must be played by ear. Loom was also the first game to follow the LucasArts game design philosophy, which states that the player will never be killed or forced to restart the game. Loom was received positively upon its release by both fans and critics. It received positive reviews with a lot of publications giving it a 5 out of 5 rating. It sold more than 500,000 copies and was even praised by writer Orson Scott Card, who said it was like nothing you've ever seen or done before, a work of storytelling art. There were 2 sequels planned according to series creator Brian Moriarty. The first, tentatively called Forge. It tells the story of Bobbin's friend Rusty Nile Bender, whose home city, the Forge of the Blacksmiths, was enslaved by chaos near the end of Loom. Rusty becomes the leader of an underground movement to overthrow chaos together with Fleece Firmflanks of the Shepherds and new characters from other guilds. The third game, The Fold, is about Fleece Firmflanks and her attempt to unite the shattered guilds in a final, desperate effort to banish chaos. Near the end of the game, when the cause appears hopeless, Bobbin and the Weavers sweep in like the proverbial cavalry to save the day. However, none of those 2 sequels were ever developed. According to Brian Moriarty, contrary to popular belief, the Loom sequels were not abandoned because Loom didn't sell well. The reason the sequels weren't made is that I decided I wanted to work on other things and nobody else wanted to do them either. After Loom, Moriarty worked on a cancelled Indiana Jones educational game before joining the team for another iconic Lucasfilm game, The Dig. The game had a very problematic development phase, and when Moriarty's version was dropped, he left Lucasfilm. He then joined a couple of other studios in the 90s before following an academic career. It is a true shame that we didn't get to see another Loom game and follow the franchise's excellent story and setting. However, the game stands in its own today as one of the best examples of excellent storytelling and a true representative of the genre's heyday during the early 90s. That was the full history of Loom, a bit short to be honest, but otherwise it is a unique game that has its own place among the pantheon of great adventure games. Do not forget to watch my other retrospectives of iconic franchises like King's Quest, Space Quest, Gabriel Knight and more. You can also find my 2-hour documentary on the rise and fall of the genre. If you like the content of my channel, please consider supporting it by subscribing and turning on the notifications for it. We will have more adventure games videos soon. Thank you all for watching.